For as much as our world and our tech may change, many of the lessons we need to learn stay the same. How to take care of ourselves, how to take care of each other, how to take care of the future, how to take care of the world. Many of these ideas are ones that modern societies struggle with, but many indigenous folks have understood these things for generations. These ideas and more actually can really help to inspire quality game design as well as quality lives. Connor Wall is here to help us better understand how to use Indigenous Futurism to help us make better game loops. Connor Wall is a self-described game programmer with a narrative design background who studied at Johns Hopkins University. He led Black and Indigenous student groups there. He has also worked in Sweden, Denmark, China, and the United States. Here to bring a global perspective and Indigenous futuristic understanding, please welcome Connor Wall.
We're in a broken industry with broken game loops. Let's find a solution. Let me explain. First, I'd like to thank those who came before and who made this talk possible. That includes Elizabeth Lapense, Megan Byrne, and Inari Kikorian. I come from an ethnically mixed background. I have family that's East Indian, Black, Arawak, and European on one side, and a long history of LDS or Mormon on the other. The past several years, I've been exploring how my grandpa grew up with East Indian and Arawak influence in Guyana before moving to the US with my grandma as a teenager. I've always wanted to improve our collective relationship with our environment as a species. So professionally, I started by exploring wildlife conservation, public health, and international policy. After discovering the social power of games, however, I found work as a writer and programmer in Denmark and Sweden before returning to the US. I'm currently working on a third-person adventure sandbox game that seeks to capture the beauty and brutality of nature from the perspective of an android. I'm really curious about the stories of those who can't tell stories. We often look at animals, for example, in relation to their service to us. But what about that secret life of a Yellowstone wolf that never once sees a human? What's its story? First, I'd like to say that indigeneity is not a monolith. Globally, Native cultures enjoy many unique lived experiences. This talk defines Indigenous futurism by drawing similarities between colonized communities and their resilience. First, I'll explain my 5 pillars of design, then finish with some examples of archetypes in beautiful ways that they embody and examples. We live in a dystopia. If you're alive at the time this is recorded, there's a high chance you're in an area that's affected by ecosystem collapse, war, death, disease, more, flying cars. What do we do about it? We need indigenous optimism and resilience in storytelling. Indigenous people have lived the post-apocalypse, so are uniquely able to write immersively and understand the resilience of what comes after. Here's some examples. The Western world recognizes events like these, the climate crisis, studio collapse, layoffs, as new. The problems we face today are as old as our ancestors. However, our collective response is singly responsible to our future. This applies to the game industry. As studios crumble, genres get old, game devs and gamers suffer. Let's learn from the past and honor what natives have learned. If we apply this proactive principle to game development, you'll see we make better tools and higher quality games for those who come after. Games with non-straightforward, non-dominating gameplay loops often make great games, achieving unexpected success because they imagine symbiotic futures. Subnautica, Outer Wilds, Never Alone, they do this well with open world exploration, horror, and survival elements. There's a need from both Western and Indigenous gamers to experience new lore and mythpunk as well. Reruns of like ancient Rome and medieval England are nice, but they're getting predictable. Let's imagine new worlds and allow spaces where multiple philosophies can emerge, coexist, clash, or harmonize. So much of this is alive today. In Prey, for example, Tommy's heritage allows him to roam freely and come back to life using his spirit. In my opinion, this is such a great, more innately human solution than some plot device respawn. These gameplay loops are also embedded in our environment, in virtual worlds. The indigenous worldview rests in multidimensional harmony, reciprocity, exchange, and respect for all living elements. Just as humans are not separate from the natural world, developers and players are not separate from the engines or the games they create. As humans, we exist in a multiplayer space, not as a lone hero. Multiplayer games need these reciprocity and reciprocal loops to maintain longevity, just like at Fortnite. Indigenous communities are stewards of technology and knowledge. Generational knowledge, tribal legacies in communities, or in other words, social media, are forms of sharing experiential knowledge from elders to new tribe members, just like older players to new players. Let's embrace community-driven development. Let's create cycles that outlive us and leave legacies in games. Astronomy has been studied for decades and generations, and if you're familiar with Andean cultures, quipus were some of the first computers and were beautiful as well, as clothing you can wear, but also perform complex calculations with. And finally, games are a tool for justice. Virtual spaces solve real-world problems. Imagining new worlds allows spaces where multiple philosophies exist. Oftentimes, nations in the global south are forced to digitize certain aspects of culture or their country. Even Assassin's Creed was a great resource for revitalizing the Notre Dame building after it burnt down. So games aren't just a tool for entertainment, but are a contemporary resource for indigenous communities to thrive alongside Western beliefs. So I think a lot of these speak for themselves. So I think a lot of these speak for themselves. Vanishing native is often a stereotype associated with old age or natives and dinosaurs always living together. But natives are real. We're here. We're alive. And lastly, I'd like to go over some of the archetypes you can use in your work as a game developer or game designer and avoid tired stereotypes unintentionally or intentionally. The vanishing native is a harmful stereotype that imagines natives in the past or always living in dinosaurs. Or in other words, the only real native is a dead native. So I think some of these examples are great games and great media that disrupt these stereotypes by imagining these characters in the present and in future contexts with power. For example, Prey is one of my favorites in the Predator franchise. The main character is a final girl. She's resilient. She uses her intelligence and disrupts that uh, narrative of human cannon fodder or murdered, missing, and indigenous women. She's alive, um, and I think a lot of these speak for themselves. Hill Agency is pretty great at creating a game that's community specific, and um, Never Alone is also pretty great at telling a story that is non-traditional while also embodying Mother Nature as a character, not just a piece of land that you walk over. And to close, I'd like to show some of my references, and let's stay in touch. If you're interested in learning more, check out some of these essays, books, and games, and uh, enjoy. Hope you enjoyed.
We're in a broken industry with broken game loops. Never in all my life an intro so quick, so efficient, so accurate. Thank you so much for that talk, Connor. This idea of centering pillars of Indigenous futurism do seem like they make for fantastic game design. Open up to knowledge of the past. Create new worlds of the future by exploring amazing spaces that we have all around us. And don't forget about the cycles of play that have come before and after, and will come after the current moment. And that's all game dev, but that's also not a game dev lesson. Those are life lessons. I appreciate that. If you would like to keep up with Connor, you can find him on his website at connorwall.com, or you can find him on LinkedIn at Connor Wall. Connor, thank you for your talk.